Sholom Bias Cookies, you will need 2 bowls. This one bowl and then another bowl in order to put the chocolate part in one and the plain cookie dough in the other. Once you start to make the Sholom Bias cookies, you'll need 1 cup of margarine that I've defrosted and cut up into cubes. Place that in the bowl. You will also need 1 egg already checked for blood and 1 cup of sugar. You will also need 1½ teaspoons of baking powder. That's 1 teaspoon, and here's another ½ a teaspoon. Now you will also need a teaspoon of water and it needs 3 cups of flour. We're only going to start with 2 cups of flour because we have to be able to split the dough. So I'm putting 2 cups of flour in to the bowl, and then I'm going to start to mix it. I mix it with my hands until I get a nice proper ball of dough. And that's what I'll be doing next. Once you have a nice mixture of the dough, then what I do is I split it in half. And you can eyeball it if you want, but I like to use a food scale. I use a food scale and I try to see if I can get 2 halves that are basically the same weight. Okay, now I've split the dough into 2 even parts, and what we're going to do now is we're missing 1 cup of flour. Remember, there's supposed to be 3 cups of flour and I only did 2. So into 1/2 I'm going to put another ½ a cup of flour, and that's going to be in the plain cookie dough part. And then I'll put that aside and I'll mix that up. Now in this other bowl, because I'm missing ½ a cup of flour, I'm going to put a ¼ cup of flour into there, and then I'm going to add a ¼ cup of cocoa. And that will make up for the ½ a cup of flour that we were missing in this part of the dough. So now both parts of the dough have the same amount of dry ingredients, and that's very important to make these cookies in the best way that we can. So now you should have in one bowl the chocolate, and in the other bowl you should have the plain cookie dough. And this is how it should look, and it should feel nicely in your hands. Now I use my food scale again, this time to split apart the 2 plain cookie doughs into 2 even pieces. And then after I do that, then I'll do the same to the chocolate side. Okay, now the dough has been split in 2 and then into 2 again. So you'll have 2 plain cookie dough balls and 2 chocolate cookie dough balls. And now I'm going to make them into ropes. It's not always so simple to make it into 1 long rope, so I break the 1 little ball into 2, rubbing them, and to make them into 1 long rope, I'll connect them together. You can see that it's not exactly smooth. My cookies are definitely not perfect, and they're not perfect squares as they should be, and maybe you can figure out how to make them a perfect square, and I'd be very happy to see that. But this is the way I do it. Definitely not perfection, but definitely delicious. So now, as you can see, I'm rubbing the chocolate side, and I rub them, push them together, squish it a little, and now I have 2 ropes, a plain cookie dough and the chocolate side. And now I'm going to do the same thing again, repeating what I just did, but on top of that layer. I take the chocolate ball of dough and I rub it, and I split it in half because, as I said, it does make it a little bit easier to squish it into a nice long rope. So I do that, and I place the chocolate side on the plain cookie side rope, and I'm doing the same with the rest of the chocolate dough. And now I'm going to do the same with the plain dough, the plain cookie dough. I'm going to make it into a rope. You can see it here that I am trying to make it into a square, into chocolate and plain into a little shape. But it's not perfect, as I said, and I want to thank my camera woman, Meira, for taking such a good shot of that. Okay, now I'm going to make the magic happen here. I have placed this on a piece of plastic wrap that I put on my table. After I've squished it all as much as I can, I'm going to start to roll it. So I take the plastic wrap and roll it, and then I smooth it down. I'm trying to make it into a square shape and smoothing and elongating all at the same time. Okay, then I'm going to continue to roll again, smoothing it out, elongating it a little bit, and also just making sure that it's flat and it's not too bumpy. And again, one more time until it's all wrapped up, and then I tuck it in on the sides, and then it's ready to go into the refrigerator. It could be 2 hours until it's nice and hard, because we are going to slice it into something nice and thin and make beautiful Sholom Bias cookies. And that's basically what we do. And I will show you what I do next. Now you can see it's the next day, and I've taken it out of the refrigerator, but I've cut it in half because it was quite long. So now you can see the kind of plain cookie and the chocolate cookie in a diagonal, and I'm going to slice it very, very thin. I personally like to slice it thin. I think the cookies come out tastier and delicious. You can see how thin it is. It's quite thin, but everyone really likes it that way. Sometimes I cut them a little bit thicker, but it definitely tastes good like this, nice and thin. Now, when you bake it, you can bake it for 12 minutes, up to 17 minutes on 350. But I have to say, I personally like them when they're darker, so I bake them a little longer. And usually what I'll do is bake half my dough less and half more. And here you can see them on the tray, and once they're done, they're beautiful and definitely not perfect, but we love them. So what's the story behind the Sholom Bias cookies? Sholom Bias, what that means is peace in the home. Why do I call these peace in the home cookies? Not necessarily because they bring peace in the home, but they did bring it to mine. Many, many, many years ago, I was having approximately 30 people for dinner, and my husband said, wouldn't it be nice to have those little black and white cookies, you know, those little ones that are a little diagonal? And I thought, okay, but I don't think I have time to do that because I've already planned a menu, and I don't really have time to do that as well. And he said, but I really, really want them. And I didn't know if I wanted to disregard what he wanted, but in the end I decided, why not? I'm already working so hard, I'll just do it. So I found a basic cookie recipe, and then I developed the rest myself, how to get a chocolate side and how to make the whole thing. I never saw it in a recipe book. I never saw it on YouTube or any place. I just made the rest of it up in my head. And when I served it that night for dinner, it made him so happy, and it brought lots of peace in our home. And so I call them Sholom Bias cookies, and I hope you will enjoy them too.